If you're new to fishing, but you're watching videos about it, you probably have a little bit of boat envy. I know I do. Boaters look so happy and free running out to any spot they can imagine and catching fish of a lifetime whenever they want. So if someone offers you a free boat, you'll probably jump at the opportunity. But as my high school economics teacher told us over and over again, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And as you'll soon see, there's no such thing as a free boat. I'm Ted Tremonti, part-time maker, part-time angler, and this is the story of how a free 50-year-old boat cost me 50 years of my sanity. This is how I restored my dad's old Jonboat. This is a 1975 Alumacraft 14-foot Jonboat. I've got my work cut out for me. Should be pretty fun to restore. Mercury 50-year-old engine. What year did you say this was? This is my dad. He's the original owner. 79?
Both of them. I think this is 79 as well.
What's the horsepower?
20.
20? I remember we moved in this thing.
Yeah, hell. Remember we went to look at the building implode?
You bought it new?
Yeah. I had the little 15 Johnson. We drove that thing into the ground.
You had that in Louisiana, or did you get it here?
Louisiana.
Before I take this thing on the road, I want to do a little bit of cleaning so I'm not dumping debris behind me. It's as clean as it's gonna get. Yeah, that leaves a little to be desired. Oh! Oh!
No, that's good.
When did you put that on?
I don't know.
I'm also dying to know if the motor starts and if the hull has any leaks.
Yeah, Jason changed the water impeller. I think he changed the lower unit oil with new spark plugs, and he fixed that melted
capacitor.
Oh, and also there was something had a small crack. I think it's down at the water pump area that he put JB
Weld. We're both pretty stoked when the engine fires right up with just a little bit of coaxing. But if you're familiar with the fundamentals of storytelling, you'll know some good foreshadowing when you see it. And this is textbook foreshadowing.
Get it now.
So you got it in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And then you must have brought it with you when you moved here. You sold, what did you sell to Jesse?
The trailer.
The trailer, and then you put this in the back of your truck?
We hauled it with the furniture when they moved to Florida.
Really? Like in the moving truck?
Yeah, a big moving. Then I bought this trailer from Harbor Freight. It's got a lot of miles on it. Came with a 15 horsepower Johnson. And one day that crapped out, and I gave it to a guy to have him fix it, and he said it was going to cost $800 to fix it. I said, no, just forget about it.
So you found this.
So I saw that in, there's a marina in Melbourne, and he wanted $400 for it. I said, okay, I'll come pick it up. When I went there, he couldn't start it. We just overhauled it. He says, it'll start. I'll get my mechanic to rebuild the carburetor. So I said, okay, I'll come pick it up. Used it a number of times. You and I used it.
Yeah, all the time. When we got stranded, was that gas or did the engine die?
it just died. That's when it died. We were paddling, the guy pulled us in.
Right, I remember that.
And then I just put it away. I said, I'm not messing with it.
Was that really the last time we took this boat out? Together?
Together. Then Jason took it, I brought it to him.
Right.
He said, I'll work on it. So he took it all apart and he showed me what was.
Yeah, I remember all the pictures he took.
And so then he called me and said, yeah, I got it running. It's running fine. Years passed, it just sat in his garage. And one day I said, just take my motor, I'll take that other one back. I bought a Yamaha 15 horsepower.
For this boat?
For this boat.
Gotcha.
Well, I was going to sell the whole thing, the whole rig, for like $1,500.
Right. Nobody would buy it.
Well, I never tried.
Well, I guess you never really did. And then you couldn't give it away.
Well, they wouldn't take it. I guess they looked at the motor. Well, that's no good. Nobody's going to bid on that. Harbor freight trailer, nobody's going to bid. Next
List
time
it
goes out, that's
yeah.
it. It's over. That's some big tires on that truck. It's going to be costly replacement.
People put bigger ones on too. Finally, I hitched the trailer to my truck with about 70% confidence it'll survive the journey. I know I'll need to take the motor off while dealing with the hull, so I used some 2x4s and other leftover wood to put together a rolling stand. If it can support me wiggling around on it, it should hold the motor just fine, fingers crossed. First things first, let's get that motor off. I'm playing it cool for the neighbors watching across the street, but I'm already in over my head. My stand is just slightly taller than I can easily lift. I channel my embarrassment and manage to just barely get it hooked and then manhandle it into place. Off to a great start. Now, the remaining plastic seat needs to go. The only problem is I have no idea how it's fastened to the boat. I banged my knuckles for a few minutes trying to undo a couple of nuts on the underside before settling on using an oscillating saw to cut the bolts between the pedestal and the aluminum. Now I'll set my sights on removing the rotten transom wood so I can find out if this hull will ever be seaworthy again. While researching for this project, I learned that some chemicals used in pressure-treated lumber are quite reactive with aluminum. It turns out that we used pressure-treated plywood the last time this transom was redone. I'm just praying that there's some good aluminum left under all that brown powder. This wire wheel does an okay job on the corrosion, but very quickly I realized it's the wrong tool for removing the thick FlexSeal layer all over the transom area. I tried 60 grit sandpaper and it's even worse. How about the angle grinder? It's doing something, but the masonry discs aren't right either. Does FlexSeal melt? No, sure doesn't. This sucks. I had to go to the store to grab an assortment of tools to find something that actually works. These stripper discs for the grinder work pretty well, but it takes a lot of effort. Let's see how Citrus Strip does. With a little waiting, the paint practically melts right off. The FlexSeal is noticeably easier to grind off with the disc, and I power through the rest of the transom. On the inside, the Citrus Strip had a much better chance at melting through the FlexSeal, and everything comes off nice and easy. Now, I need to get these benches out. I use a punch to start my drill and knock the rivets out. Listen closely to this next bit. You're about to hear me say something incredibly stupid. I don't want to like oversell it, but I might be able to get at least the inside done in one more day. Did you catch that? This idiot really thinks he's almost done. He doesn't even realize there's like 6 hours of time-lapse footage by the end of this project, and he's not even past the first hour. Back to the angle grinder. This is hard work, but it's immensely satisfying to reveal beautiful, shiny aluminum under all that gunk. I also work the pressure washer into my routine. It's extremely effective at blasting off big globs of chemically stripped paint. It's also just a relief to be holding my hands and arms in a different position for a while. Another reason for switching tools is that besides the truly tenacious nature of the paint and FlexSeal, what's dragging this removal out is the immense power drain of running an angle grinder. This is a 6 amp hour, 18 volt battery, and I'm ripping through its capacity in under 30-minute sessions. I switched over to the decidedly less effective drill and wire wheel to get into some of the tighter corners and clean as much crud out as possible. And here, my tool battery dies and my spiritual battery with it. I begin to question everything in my life that has led to this moment. I also do some quick math and decide industrial amounts of citrus strip are much cheaper than therapy, and I go buck wild. I no longer care how many gallons of this stuff it takes, it's worth it. I think it's worth covering the goo as best I can so that it has the best chance of working in the Florida sun. Pressure washer in hand, I set to clearing off the thick layer of stripper. Honestly, I'm a little disappointed, which means back to the angle grinder. If you think you're sick of grinding, imagine how I feel having to edit all of it down into something barely tolerable while still getting through to the viewer just how arduous this is. With my batteries recharging once again, I think it's time to switch gears to something a little more in my wheelhouse. My dad and uncle ran their replacement wiring external to the trailer tubing, which just seems like it's asking for a rock to break a cable and cause a short. They also terminated the wiring at the rear by the brake lights rather than at the trailer tongue. I don't think you need to submerge this trailer much, if at all, to float the boat off. Regardless, the brake lights have wire bundles long enough to reach the tongue, and I'm gonna use them. I break out my portable soldering iron to splice the amber side lights into the power and heat shrink and tape it for good measure. First try. Everything looks good, which is the first success I've had this entire project so far. Now I'll address the tongue jack. The bolts are way too long for this tiny trailer. The shims are functional, but boy are they ugly. The solution is to just use shorter bolts. Unfortunately, I forgot I wanted to reorient the jack so the handle doesn't interfere with the winch. I'll have to fix that later. Now, it's time to build the new transom. I'm actually as excited as a normal human can be about this because I've been looking for an excuse to use some serious epoxy in a project. A couple years ago, I built a skate ramp with 3/4 inch plywood deck. I promptly fell on it and injured my wrist and shoulder. That deck would make a perfect transom material once pumped full of penetrating epoxy. I took some pretty bad measurements and completely bungled the angles, but the width and height are spot on, so I'm gonna run with it. Before I start the epoxy, I hit the wood with some 80 grit sandpaper. This is Total Boat penetrating epoxy. It kind of smells like brownies to me, but my wife swears it's just acetone. I very quickly realized that popsicle mixing sticks are not the right spreading tool, but I'm committed for this batch. It's so bizarre. I know this is probably unnecessary, but I want to do a second epoxy pour, so I repeat the process, this time cleaning any sanding residue. Now, I need to sandwich the two pieces together. Total Boat says not to use this penetrating epoxy as an adhesive. However, these two boards are gonna have a dozen bolts through them or so I'm not too worried about the bond. I've got to knock off the overspill first and clean the residue, of course. Now I spread a healthy amount on both sides and start clamping, and then pile on anything remotely heavy I can find. I don't think I've been really intimidated by any part of this project so far. Except now it's time to paint the interior. And I'm very nervous. I'm using a tool never used before, using a type of paint I've never used before on a surface that needs really particular attention in order to have the paint adhere properly. So no pressure. I figure using one of the bench seats will be as good a starting point as any. If I botch it, it's the most straightforward to strip and redo. Just before starting, I bathe the seat in Total Boat aluminum etching wash and then rinse with water and dry it off. Right away, the Rust-Oleum topside paint is too thick for this machine to spray nicely. In a panic, I add a bit too much acetone. It sprays better now, but I'm concerned it's not really adhering to the surface since it's so thin. I grab a paintbrush and ruin the whole finish. Maybe I can salvage it by doing the exact same thing again. I'm not sure how that could have gone worse. I honestly don't know what I was thinking. I shouldn't even put this in the video. That was so bad. It's the next day. Last night, right before the sun went down, I was like, oh, I better bring that bench in. And I didn't really look. I pretty much had my eyes closed the entire time because I didn't want to even look at what happened. But, I mean, if you look really close, it's terrible. And by really close, I mean if you look at it at all, it's terrible. Don't even look at all the grass that's stuck in it. But it adhered. And I mean, at least on the top surface here, I don't even hate that it's orange peeled because it's a little textured, little grippy. It's not like I'm painting a car. Flipping the hull, I'm relieved to see that we hadn't coated every square inch of it in FlexSeal. I get to work armed with a new angle grinder disc, the infamous flap disc, in 40 grit. I have to be careful because 40 grit can quickly remove aluminum, but it's worth it, powering through paint and FlexSeal like it wasn't even there. Even so, I'm looking for any excuse not to do this entire hull, and I decide to only hit the gnarliest, flakiest looking spots. I figure if the paint hasn't fallen off yet, it's on there good enough to paint over. This lets me quickly move on to examining the bottom rivets for any that need to be replaced. There are quite a few that look suspect after grinding the FlexSeal off. Some are corroded and most have almost no material left from abrasion and rebucking throughout the years. This is pretty time consuming as the rivet head gets wrapped up around the drill bit and I have to deal with that before I can move on. After removing all the shady rivets, I do some quick counting, a little bit of math, and realize I've removed well over half of the rivets and may as well just do them all. With that, the exterior is ready for paint, so I flip the hull over and return to the interior. I'm not comfortable with how much pitting the aluminum transom has. The last bit of JB weld I had did not go very far, so once again I turned to Total Boat. Specifically their fairing compound. I doubt it's as sturdy as JB weld, but I'm relying on the wood to provide the structure. I'm hoping the fairing compound will smooth out and seal up any tiny pinholes. I used some offcuts from the transom as a mixing hawk, and the first batch goes on nicely. I get a little carried away on the second batch, and there's no way to mix it all effectively on this small piece of wood. This stuff is thick too, and my hands are on fire working the blue and yellow parts into a consistent green. And of course, I've got to sand everything smooth. Now I mix up a small batch of GluvIt epoxy. This is supposed to be the holy grail for stopping leaks in an aluminum boat. I'm planning to use this mostly on the exterior, but I figure it can't hurt to do the bilge area that will be below the waterline. I mixed up way more than I needed, so rather than waste it, I hit all the seams. GluvIt is supposed to be particularly suited for flowing into unseen imperfections like cracked weld seams or leaky rivets. Just a few more pieces to prep, so you know what that means. More grinding! The two transom support brackets are still covered in paint, FlexSeal, and corrosion. There are also two little arch things on the floor of the bilge prep too. I'm still not sure what they're for, but I may as well put them back where I found them. Now, I etch the pieces and paint them using a very advanced technique. These don't have to be pretty. I still have very low confidence in that paint sprayer from the first test. I couldn't shake the feeling that a gravity-fed HVLP sprayer was more of what I was looking for, so I went buy one to test on the remaining bench. Not only is this much easier to prepare, but it's a breeze to clean since it's all metal and very few parts touch the paint. Most importantly, it's leaving an amazing finish. Now for the most riveting part of this entire project. I told my wife if she didn't put in some elbow grease on the boat, she wouldn't be allowed to ride. She called my bluff, but volunteered to help me buck the rivets anyway. I'm planning on coating these rivets with GluvIt, but I'm also squirting some 3M 5200 with each rivet. Is this overkill? Absolutely. Will I regret it? Most likely, but I'm doing it anyway. It takes us a few rivets to get in sync and start flowing through this, but between my tiny pancake compressor running out of air and our muscle straining from the awkward positions, still isn't a fast process to buck nearly 200 rivets. A final inspection reveals only a few rivets that got mangled and needed to be drilled out and replaced. After a quick paint job over the GluvIt and fairing compound in the transom and bilge area, it's time to install the wood transom, only it doesn't fit. I forgot that the two halves sandwiched together are dramatically thicker than the old transom, but I have a plan. The grinder! It's still a tight fit, but there's plenty of space all around to account for expansion, so I'm gonna run with it. Now I position the transom support brackets, and oh, for sake, of course these don't fit either. Can you guess what comes next? That's right, the hacksaw. On a little grinder action too. I also need to drill new holes, matching the old holes in the hull, offset by the nose I just hacked off. It looks a mess, and that's because it is. Now I can fit the support brackets in place and drill through the transom so everything can be bolted tightly together. I also install some new handles that will be bolted through as well. Now, because I'm not confident that the penetrating epoxy sealed all the way through the hole I just drilled, and I can't be sure the stainless steel bolts won't make contact with any bare aluminum, everything is getting a liberal coating of 5200. I truly feel for the next person to work on this boat. I hope it's not me. And I almost forgot to drill some holes for rope cleats. Now look, it's not pretty, but I'm positive that this isn't going to leak. The motor will be blocking most of this ugliness anyway, so it'll look just fine after some paint. With just two tiny holes that were hidden under the rib, I'm pretty pleased. I dab a little 5200 on them, and I'm confident that the GluvIt will take care of the rest. This is it. The most critical step. Nobody else is gonna know how much time I spent making this thing watertight and rock solid, but everyone will see the paint job. And I can't escape the fear that after all this effort, the paint will scrape off at the lightest touch. But there's nothing left to procrastinate with. I have to paint the interior so I can flip the boat and paint the exterior. First, I wash everything down so there's no oil and dirt blocking the etching wash from doing its job. I fill my spray gun with the etching wash because that seems a lot more efficient than dousing it and rubbing everything down with a cloth. It is, but it's also basically a war crime, and I immediately had to put on my respirator. Then the etching wash has to come off or it might inhibit the paint, I think. But now there's water everywhere again, which will definitely inhibit the paint. A leaf blower does an okay job at blowing the water out. And finally, many light coats of Rust-Oleum topside paint. The angles are pretty awkward here. I picked a day with almost no wind forecast, but after the prep was finished, the wind had picked up slightly, so I'm not quite able to spray across the hull to the other side. In between some of the coats, I'm hitting a lot of the surface area with 240 grit and going back over it with a tack cloth. I don't think I'm doing a good job though, and it mostly feels like wasted effort. It does make me feel professional. I am so stoked with how the white paint is looking. There are a few spots that need touch-ups, but that's okay because I have some more work to do. I need to get the benches reinstalled. The holes I made drilling the rivets out are comically large, which makes riveting them tightly a challenge. I'm not too pressed about this though, as I want to revisit these in the future, making them more sturdy and useful for storage. The bucking bar and scraping aluminum mar up my beautiful paint. Another reason why I expected to have to do some touching up still. If 3M 5200 on close to 200 rivets didn't seal this boat completely, a quart of GluvIt epoxy should finish the job. I use a cheap brush and glob a whole bunch onto every set of rivets on the bottom, and then go down every rib, making sure they have a good layer. Afterwards, I hit every external seam, and using what's left, I managed to coat the entire bottom half of the hull. After curing for a week, it has a really weird greenish-brown sheen. All right, same process as before. Aluminum etching wash goes on the entire hull. I'm not sure how this interacts with the GluvIt coat. I'm hoping that since it's only about 5 minutes of exposure, it should be fine. Okay, a little longer than 5 minutes, but there's no undoing it. Just need to rinse it off and then dry things out. The painting process is much easier on my body this time around. I can get an optimal distance with the sprayer and I can make long passes. Of course, these long passes mean my tiny pancake compressor can't keep up, and I have to do a lot of standing around as my regulated pressure drops to nothing. And standing between coats again, too. A keen observer will notice I'm wearing my respirator this time. After painting the interior, I spent the evening pulling white boogers out of my nose, and that's a pretty good way of demonstrating that just because you don't feel like you're inhaling something doesn't mean you aren't. Once again, Katie volunteers some help. She offered to use her Cricut vinyl cutter to make identification numbers, as well as a silly little logo I made to name this reborn boat. I've never applied decals before, but this center hinge method works pretty well. The geometry of the surface is what's tripping me up, but both sides go pretty well with only one tiny mistake. Existential Dreadnought is a name that took me many days of workshopping to come up with. I'm prone to melancholy, as the kids in the 1800s would say, so playing off of existential dread is right up my alley, and the scream face fits perfectly. I also think it's very funny to call this Jonboat a dreadnought. When I ran it by my family, the women didn't really get it. My dad chuckled, maybe out of pity. That's good enough for me. The spindly little letters are a lot more challenging to keep stuck to the hull, but my wife did an awesome job making sure the edges were clean and true to the original design I gave her. Again, that rib down the hull is a little awkward, but I had to strike a balance between readably large and coherently laid out. Originally, I didn't intend on restoring this motor. After finishing up the hull, however, it seemed shameful to put this beat-to-shit motor on such a crisply revitalized boat. I decided to give it the old rattle can treatment, plus some reproduction 1979 livery. It's the least I can do. Before that though, the motor needs a good cleaning to get the ancient oil and grime off. An orbital sander makes quick work of anything flaking off or stubbornly clinging on. While researching the right decals for this motor, I discovered that Mercury did not make any white motors in this era. They were all black. That explains the copious amounts of black where the white paint has worn off. Someone has been here before doing exactly what I'm about to do. Removing the old decals is an exercise in patience, and I don't get much exercise. I order a knockoff 3M decal eraser wheel, which smells strongly of vanilla for some reason. This thing really works, especially once you realize your drill should be in high gear. These stickers are obliterated and the residue with it. I forgot to hit record on the spray can session, but I'm sure you've all seen a spray can being used, so I think nothing of value was lost. I noticed that these decals don't really look like they could have faded into the remains that I peeled off the engine. The Mercury logo in particular looked almost metallic before. Based on the serial number on the motor though, this is a 1979, and these are the decals for a 1979 20 horse. I suppose it's possible whoever painted this motor white slapped the wrong decals on, but the decal band on the lower unit had black paint under it, indicating that the white paint went on around the decals instead of under them. I'm not a decal designer or a printer or an applier, but to me it seems like it would be infinitely better to print these band decals in one long piece rather than split them and rely on dunces like me to make sure they line up. It looks so stupid. Whose idea was it to print this in two pieces? Overall, I'm happy with how the decals look, and I take it outside to fire it up. Things aren't looking good. The motor doesn't sound like it's even trying to start. The priming bulb doesn't seem to firm up no matter how much I pump it. As I'm toying with the throttle while considering my options, I hear a sickening snap from inside my hand. Cracked corner to corner. So now when I go to turn it, It wants to spread and slide past it. After an evening spent giving myself a crash course in how two-stroke combustion engines work, or don't work in my case, I spent the next morning poking around the motor components and cleaning electrical contacts. Spark plugs are sparking. Come on. Yeah! Somehow I bumbled my way into getting the spark plugs to spark and the fuel to prime, and as a result, luckily, the motor dies at idle because I disconnected the kill switch to rule that part out. Back outside with some water running through the system, it's not looking good. After a bunch of cranks, it kicks on again. Now, it's clear that the motor can't idle at all, and where it's happy to stay running seems to be pretty high in the RPM range to me. It also seems to want to slowly increase in RPMs, which is concerning. I'm definitely not happy about my ability to get it started. No way am I going to trust this motor to start up out on the water in this condition. It's time to dig in. I know the compression is good. My uncle had that checked. The spark situation seems problematic, so I start with the electrical system. According to the manual, pulling the flywheel is impossible without the official Mercury tool, which is now impossible to find and obscenely expensive. But a 10-inch gear puller works just fine. The flywheel looks okay and is still magnetic. Now I start checking components with a multimeter. This isn't a surefire way to determine if something is burnt out since there's no voltage running through the system, but I figure if my tests are inconclusive, I can order the tool I'd need to try the more accurate way. The ignition coils seem to check out fine. The trigger coil's dead on. The charging coils, however, come up as 0.2 ohms of resistance, where the book says should be about 1600 ohms. I guess I'm ordering some new charging coils. Moving on to the fuel system, the fuel line to the carburetor is pretty gnarly looking, but it doesn't appear to be leaking. It's clamped to the fittings with zip ties, however, and the hose and zip tie crumble to dust as I remove them. I figure I may as well give the carburetor a good cleaning and soak the pieces in simple green overnight, which apparently etches the metal as my relatively bright carburetor comes out of the soak a much darker shade. Everything gets a good hard blast of carb cleaner, especially all the nooks and crannies where the fuel flows. Afterwards, I used compressed air to dry everything out completely. The gaskets don't look awful to my eye, but they're definitely not new. That being said, I remember how the fuel hose disintegrated and decided it's better to just replace the gaskets and fuel pump diaphragm. The kits for this job seem to have more parts than I removed, which is concerning, but I've got the parts diagram and I'm sticking to it as best I can. This is really not a hard job. At the end, I'm left with one O-ring I can't find a home for and a few duplicate gaskets. Now to get the carb reinstalled. Now I turn my attention back to that broken throttle handle. The plastic piece is pretty simple. It's just a tube with a square end and some ridges on the outside. I can whip this up in Onshape in no time and get it printed on my 3D printer today. Warning, there's about to be some nerd CAD stuff on your screen. Viewer discretion is advised. I'm not an engineer or a CAD expert by any stretch of the imagination. If you are, then this is probably painful for you to watch. I find it pretty fun to reverse engineer a physical object though, and I do my best to get it spot on. I export the part as an STL file and bring that into my slicing software, Prusa Slicer. The last step is to take the sliced file and convert it into a format my printer understands with UV tools. And bam! First try. Okay, one tiny revision because I made a typo in the measurements, but it really is perfect. I doubt many people are gonna need this part, but I'll post it on Thingiverse anyway. This tiny box cost me $100 and took a week to arrive on my porch from Miami, which is about 2 hours away. Testing the coils individually gives me readings that are similar to the readings I saw on the old coils, so I'm not feeling too confident, but the only way out is through. Installing these is a lot more tricky than removing them, and that was no walk in the park, I'll tell you that. There's an offset piece of metal positioned between the coil and the core, which locks everything into place once the clip reaches the back and drops into a slot. Now I trim the wires and solder on some ring terminals. I'm a little wary of these wires being in the way when I reinstall the flywheel, but I'm not really sure what I can do. The coils originally had tiny zip ties holding the wires into the ring around the bearing, but I can't see how that would be physically possible to replicate. With the flywheel in place, I'm getting a pretty consistent spark on every pull. With the fuel system and spark addressed, I can test the motor again. Well, that scared the shit out of me. I'm pretty sure that's because I had the carb tuned extremely rich to deal with the poor spark. After resetting the idle mixture to the standard 1.5 turns from bottom, it sounds much less dangerous. I'll let the motor warm up for a bit and then continue tweaking the idle mixture as best I can. All that's left is to get it out on the water. Don't worry about all that time left in this video. No, come on. No! Yes. No. It's working! Sit on the left side. There we go. It runs so much better. It's still not perfect, but it's definitely much better. I'm not as scared.
I need like a magnet.
It's aluminum. Aluminum's not magnetic.
Suction cup.
We're taking on water.
Really?
Yeah. It's the top rivet on the seat. I didn't think it would be underwater. It's not completely sealed.
It's a little thick.
We probably won't. I've got the bilge.
I saw that. That did not build my confidence in this boat.
Something wasn't right. Something wasn't right. It started running weird. that didn't feel good. What the f? Ah. What the f is that? Start! Unbelievable. Ow! Okay, so the Maiden Voyage didn't go to plan. I suspect the motor might be out of time, so I'll take a look at that. So I came out here to check if the motor's in time. Painted some marks here. 0, 5 degrees, 33 degrees. I found those values in the service manual I found. When getting ready, I noticed some shininess in here. I guess the trigger wires were touching the flywheel, and the white trigger at least is broken all the way through to the copper in several places. The brown, yep, also toast. I'm gonna take the flywheel off and address this. Maybe I can just take the electronic box off, it'll be easier. I decided to pull the flywheel anyway, just to make sure that these wires were all good, and they seem to be fine. But the only thing I am concerned about is this terminal block here. It was obviously making contact with the edge, and it just barely got sanded down. And the reason for that is this hole here, it's not threaded. It just sits in there. When I took it apart to replace the stator coils, I thought the screw was stripped, and finally I decided, okay, well, I'm just gonna stick a screwdriver in this gap here and pry up on it. And as I was doing that, it just popped off. It looked like it was just adhered here. Okay, so the motor is probably not out of time. It's 100% my fault. I did not do a good job of securing the cables. That's on me, 100%. Can't blame the motor for that one. One other thing that has bothered me during this entire process is that the upper cowl is stuck to the starter assembly, since the cord runs through it and is tied off inside of the handle. I spotted another design used in similar Mercury model years where the rope was kept in place by friction, making it easy to remove and reattach. I did some measuring and printed out a substitute design, and it looks perfect. I don't think there's any way it could be improved. I'm on fire, 2 for 2. So, with those two issues addressed, let's give the motor a start. Oh, of course not. Cool. Well, it was a good idea. That was pure hubris to think that I could improve upon 2 designs on this motor in 1 video. A month later, I couldn't let it go. And so for the last month, I would come out here, take the cowl off, look at the mess, and then go back inside. I did that off and on, probably at least once a week, might even be over a month. And then I had a brain blast. I think my running issues were twofold on the water. One, obviously the trigger cables got cut into and we're shorting out on the flywheel. But the other is I'm pretty sure that this was not functioning correctly, especially because I hadn't secured this terminal block properly. So I JB welded the terminal block on, right? So it's rock solid now, that can't go anywhere. But I still didn't know if Even though I fixed all of this other stuff, I still was not getting a spark while testing it. And I eventually decided that it had to be this. And I just could not figure out if this needed to be grounded or not grounded. And some of you may be thinking, well, that's obvious. Of course it needs to be grounded. To me, my experience, this wasn't threaded. So how am I supposed to know that it wasn't meant to just be a bolt in this terminal block, keeping it in place? Since this is all plastic, it would not have been grounded. Eventually, just the other day, I came out here one more time and used some jumper cables. I got this piece solidly grounded and was getting spark. So once this was grounded, had spark, I tested it without it grounded, no spark. But what I decided to do is I've taken the original bolt that was in here in the terminal block. I found this hole on this side of the assembly is threaded, and it's the same thread pitch and everything, but this bolt was way too long. So hacked it in half. I will secure this here. I did test. This hole is grounded, so we're good there. And I came out here to film, reassembling all of this and then getting it running again because I have no doubt that it's gonna work. And then I realized my fear yesterday is that the JB Weld kind of seeped down into this hole here and has gummed up the trigger coil. And now the trigger coil will not advance. Please be easy. Just that little bit right there. And it got right here. So that's free now. Now, trigger. Plastic on this has started to deteriorate ever so slightly. I think it's good. Okay, I'm reasonably confident that these aren't going to go anywhere. So I've got the yellow through this zip tie, doubled back on itself, and then secured. I've got the white from over here coming down, around through this zip tie, and up to here. And then I've got this white through this zip tie right here. So the other yellow from this charging coil comes down to the ground. Probably could put another zip tie around the two just to be super sure. How embarrassing would that be? Break another wire. Beautiful. Yeah, that yellow wire right there, he would chafe, but the terminal block is clear. Yeah. No touching. This is how it should have been in the first place. Oh, you're not even going to be able to see this, but I need to see it. Yep, saw it. Saw it. Saw it. All right, let's do the other one. Yeah, I see it. Okay. Good spark. I am unreasonably nervous about this. I was already resigned to the fact that I failed here, and now I've given myself hope again. Let it rip. You guys saw I had spark, right? It's not getting fuel. Now what made the difference? Does this cap not let enough air in? I don't like that there's still no water coming out. It's hot. Very hot water coming out of the prop. Well, water's coming out of the prop and it stops. So I don't think this hose is blocked. Yeah, definitely water coming out of the prop now. And water has definitely stopped. So this hose is not the problem. So it must be the supply. Well, other than the head and the pistons, the only thing I haven't taken apart yet is the lower unit. So I may as well learn how to do that, right? I'll come back to this tomorrow. Disconnect the sparks for safety. Guess I'll just start here. Woo, we're free. I didn't think I'd get this far. This is the water tube, not cracked. I don't know if it's coming through on camera, but there's lots of oil in here. And some white stuff here I think might be grease. Guess I gotta take the water pump off. Housing looks okay. Wait. We have chunks of rubber in the pickup tube. Big chunk of rubber. Oh, thank God, that was easy. I don't see anything missing on this impeller though. Oh no, it's not part of the impeller, it's a seal. That's less good because I don't know where this goes. But there's lots of it in here. Lots and lots of it. Well, I guess I gotta keep going. It's still flexible. There's no cracks in it. So I do think that this was replaced. This does seem new to me. The key is still here. The key was still here. Woo! This is a mess. Can this gasket come off? I didn't get new gaskets because honestly, I just ordered the impeller thinking that was gonna be the entire job. I should have expected that there were gaskets involved. And then another gasket. So I'm trying really hard not to tear anything. And it looks like it's already been torn. See, that should be a circle all the way around. I can see the bits. There's one bit. There's a lot of melted gasket on this surface here. So we got another bit of hard rubber. I think that is from the previous impeller. Yeah, look at this. These are, that's 100% what it was. More rubber. There we go. So this gasket at the bottom of the water pump, maybe the water pump housing itself melted, but the troubles continue. I'm gonna try and drain the gear oil just out of sheer curiosity. It's not milky, so you can ignore the crud. I should have used a cleaner bucket. That crud is from cleaning out the carburetor. Yeah, I don't know, maybe that gear oil is okay. All right, we're a fair few days later and I've got all the parts in, I think. So we've got new water pump housing. Does have an oil seal in it already, so that's good. They look identical, so that's also good. New housing base. Yep, got oil seals. Got a divot in the right spot. And gaskets. So we'll start at the bottom. There we go. Look how cool that is. So I kind of did it to all of them, but I think it was necessary. Oh, that was the new one? It was the new one! No! How did I mix that up? That's okay, those nuts have washers anyway. Somewhat good water pump housing. We need to do the impeller and key. Nice. And shit. Well, put the impeller inside the top. I bent each fin, squished it in, and then slipped the whole thing over the drive shaft, held the key in place with my thumb, got everything into place. So I think we're good. I'm gonna go ahead and put the indented side in first. The only thing I know for sure is this nub needs to come out there. Oh, got it. Yeah, got a bunch of extra parts here, and that is concerning. And there's a slinger ring that went down around the drive shaft and sits right on top of the oil seal there. Yeah, I saw that coming. That's why I put the shades on. Yeah, I got cancer. I don't really see any problems. Oh. Okay. Just needed to go slightly in more. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay, so that went on. Oh no, was I supposed to do that first? Dang it. Oh boy, I didn't want to do that. In. That's so dumb. Water tube is in place. I had it. I had it. Yeah, I don't think that's normal. Okay, well, it's shifting now. Oh. They say you just pump until you get some leakage out of the vent. I'm hearing noises. Okay, that's a lot. Replacing the vent screw, which should now keep everything in place for the fill screw. Okay, it's leaking out. It's leaking out. It's leaking out. It was supposed to stay in. It's leaking out though. A lot more leaked out than I thought it would. It was supposed to stay in place because of like vacuum stuff. It didn't. Really? Got the spark plugs unplugged. Be safe. Pull the spark plugs. Unbelievable. Well, we're back the next day. Slight complicating issue. My garage door broke last night, so I've got it propped open now. I think what I'm gonna do is drop the lower unit again. What I should have done originally was check the copper tube that runs up to the head for blockages, maybe spray some air in there. That time the copper tube came with it. Well, I hear the air coming out of there. I feel pretty good about that, honestly. Nothing comes out. If I run the water and then give it some good compression, I do get water coming into the housing. I get a spray of water from this region, which doesn't really make sense to me. And upon looking closer, with just a gentle, pretty significant air leak from somewhere, it looks like on this bit of JB Weld. Rather than filming silicone and epoxy drying, I'll just let you know that I applied a fresh layer of JB Weld over the old JB Weld just to fill in any age-related cracking. I also took apart the water pump housing again and applied a good bead of Permatex The Right Stuff silicone on the gaskets and mating surfaces of the water pump housing. That should keep any water from escaping or oil from intruding. The motor is spraying water nice and strong at every throttle position, so that's good. Water flow issue taken care of. I even got it to idle really nicely, really smoothly. After remounting the lower unit for like the 4th time, things seemed pretty good in the shifting gears department. I can shift in and out of forward and neutral, no problem, but physically cannot move the lever into reverse. I also did get out a car battery and finally opened that timing light I bought like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and it's spot on. So timing is great, not too worried about that. Bunch of confirmations all around that I'm doing things close to right. So close. I'm really hoping that maybe this weekend I can take it out actually on the water, maybe get out of the no wake zone this time. Fingers crossed.
Sorry, some really shoddy camera work for me on this.
You're terrible.
I'm not a steady cam. It already sounds better than last time.
Huh?
It sounds better than it did last time, I feel like.
All right. We don't have reverse, so we gotta push ourselves out. Get it. I feel much better about it. It was right around this bend is where we died last time. We died, had lunch, I cursed a lot, somehow got it going again and limped home. I think we're gonna make it all the way today. All right, we're in the channel. starved of gas. I can feel the bulb isn't hard. That was pretty good. We just had to stop the motor and pick it up because we got into some grass, and this is a no grass zone. And yeah, we got it started right back up, although the bulb did not really firm up. I think there was just enough gas still in the carburetor that we were good, so. Oh yeah, that feels nice. It really is so funny. That little tiny Jonboat parked here, surrounded by the six-figure boats.
So cute.
Will it
speedboat.
start? It's gonna start. Come on.
Don't even.
I'm so glad I painted it white.
Yeah.
Imagine this was any other color. When this thing was like orange or brown or whatever we used to have it painted, it was so bad.
Like I feel the heat radiating off of it, but it's not so bad.
Right, you can touch the metal and it's not gonna burn you.
The dock
What about
hotter
it?
to sit on.
Yeah, the dock was hotter. First, let's talk about the motor. Ignoring my amateur decal mistake on the top cowl, the decals came out beautifully. The paint job is definitely not top tier, and it wore in a bit while working on the mechanical issues, but it's a far cry better than what it was. It's also a relief to have a proper dead man's kill switch installed. As for the mechanical issues, with a new set of charging coils properly wired in, the motor starts very reliably. After rebuilding the carburetor and using Permatex Right Stuff on all of the gaskets, there are no issues with fuel flow anymore. And after dropping the lower unit and completely rebuilding the water pump, again with Permatex the Right Stuff on the gaskets, as well as cleaning out all of the debris that would have surely stranded me on the water at some point, I think the motor's in pretty good mechanical condition. I even fixed the worn out throttle handle. Let's just ignore the fact that the reverse gear doesn't work now. Now, motor troubles aside, I could not be happier with how the hull itself turned out. The paint job is so far beyond my expectations, and it's not professional by any means, but it's beautiful to me. And I'm so proud of how this stupid logo that I came up with looks on the side. It really pops against this white paint. And the most important thing is I'm no longer worried about springing a leak or the motor falling off, given how much GluvIt, 5200, and penetrating epoxy there is in this boat. The trailer itself is still beat to shit, but a can of spray paint and some grease makes it presentable enough for my taste. A new tongue on the trailer and a reel lock from Packlock make hitching and unhitching a breeze. The wiring harness looks better than factory too, if I do say so myself. Overall, would I recommend you do this? No. Free boats are not free. They can cost a lot of money, especially if you go overkill like I did here. A similar fully welded aluminum boat at your local Bass Pro or what have you, probably about $1,500, maybe $2,000 for a really nice one. Then you still need a trailer, and that's not counting a motor, but you get a new trailer, you get a new motor, and you get a completely welded hull. You're pretty far ahead of the game, I think. Now, did I really need to do all of this? No. So if somebody offers you a free beat to shit boat, maybe take it and just do the bare essentials and just deal with the fact that it doesn't look pristine and be prepared for it to cost you a lot more money. Now, as I said earlier, I'm already planning on taking the benches back out and adding some sort of support structure to reinforce the seats, as well as add some storage area underneath the seats. But that's gonna have to be for another video. I've done enough making for now and not enough angling. I mean, I haven't seen a fish in months, so I'm gonna go get back out on the water. And thanks for watching.